Early in the evening of November 11th, 1938, a well-groomed woman of 30, who held a responsible position in the Queen's Land Public Service, stepped from a car and made her way toward the entrance of Brisbane Central Station. With her steps, she paused, waved goodbye to the friend who had driven her from her hotel, and then disappeared. Completely. Join me today as I take you back to the 20th century in Queensland, Australia. The disappearance of Marjorie Norval. Miss Norval was last seen about half an hour after the sun went down in Brisbane on Armistice Day, which was Friday, November 11th, 1938. She got out of a car at Central Railway Station and then disappeared completely. She was 5 feet 6 inches tall, had a medium build, short dark hair, a face with freckles, and bright blue eyes. That evening, she looked stylish in a dark dress and a white hat, which made her stand out. Miss Norval was also quite unique for her time as a modern career woman. She worked as a typist in the Chief Secretary's department and served as a trusted personal assistant and social secretary to the wife of Queensland's Premier. Born in March 1908, she was one of 5 children. Her father, James, worked as a wharf labourer, while her mother, Rose, took care of their modest home in West End, a neighbourhood in inner Brisbane. Miss Norval was a bright student, making the honour roll at her state school and excelling in music exams. At the age of 16, in 1924, she ranked 18th in the Queensland Public Service exam and began her career as a typist in the Education Department. By 1925, she was actively participating in social events organised by her department's social club and attending the coming-of-age parties of her older friends, enjoying a lively social life. Miss Norval was attractive and charming, and she started dating a widowed optician named James East, who was nearly 30 years older than her. After turning 18 in 1929, her social life really took off. She enjoyed attending bridge nights, club dances, horse races, and theatre openings, always looking for fun activities to join. Even though Miss Norval loved the lively social scene in Brisbane, she was also a dedicated worker. She steadily advanced in her public service career. After her time in the Education Department and working at Parliament House, she moved to the Chief Secretary's Department in October 1932. In June 1934, when Premier William Forgan Smith was away, his deputy, Percy Peace, became acting Premier. He chose Miss Norval to help him with the government's Loan Council. This was a significant moment for Queensland because she became the first woman to attend a meeting of this council and the youngest person to ever be part of the assembly. She was thrilled to bits, as she told the Courier Mail. By mid-1935, her responsibilities grew, and she also became the Social Secretary for Euphemia Forgan Smith, the wife of Premier Forgan Smith. Miss Norval worked hard, but also loved to travel and entertain. She often took her sports car on road trips and hosted friends for game afternoons and dinner parties at her apartment in Kangaroo Point. During the mid-1930s, her closest friend was Marjorie Norval, who was also single, social, and a rising star in public service. In late 1937, the two friends moved into the Albert Hotel, a popular social spot right next to the Tivoli Theatre and overlooking King George Square. They enjoyed living in such a vibrant part of the city, surrounded by entertainment and excitement. Soon after, Miss Norval and her friend, Marjorie Norval, went on vacation with Miss Forgan Smith, the Premier's wife, and the Deputy Premier and his wife. They stayed at the Surfers Paradise Hotel, enjoying the beach and the sunny weather. At a big party there, Miss Norval met a man named Jack Caton. Like her friend James East, Jack was an older widower and worked as a traveling representative for the Ford Motor Company. They quickly started dating. During this time, she also became friendly with Dr. Peter English, another wealthy widower. Additionally, she casually dated John Carey, a shop assistant from Gympie, who was only 5 years older than her, although he had been married for 5 years. There was also Albert Townsend, who worked as a chief investigations officer with the Customs Service in Canberra. He was married and nearly 20 years older than Miss Norval. Another rumoured love interest was George Pollock, a veteran politician and Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. He was also almost 20 years older and had been separated from his wife for 15 years. Miss Norval tried to keep her romantic life private, but she didn't realise that 2 night cleaners at the Tivoli Theatre had a clear view into her window at the Albert Hotel. For about 6 months, they watched her at night while she was getting dressed or spending time with her dates. From August to October 1938, she often complained about stomach issues, sometimes in the mornings, and took breaks from Brisbane's social scene for weeks at a time. Around this period, she also told her sisters that she hoped to get a job at the Agent General's office in London. She sold her lovely sports car and planned to save enough money for her to move to England. However, the job didn't work out, but she still dreamed of moving to England someday. In early November, Miss Norval shared with her friend and roommate that she had been given a job to drive Miss Forgan-Smith's sister, who was a patient at Willowburn Mental Asylum in Toowoomba, to Maracaibo or Caloundra. Not long after, she told Mercier that the trip had been postponed by a week. When she met her sister Gladys on November 9th, she mentioned she was going to the North Coast for a few days on confidential business for Mr. Forgan-Smith. She said he instructed her to tell her workplace that she needed to go to Bundaberg to care for a sick relative. On the morning of Friday, November 11th, she went to work as usual. There, she asked for emergency leave, saying she needed to visit a sick relative in Bundaberg, and planned to be back at work by Wednesday or Thursday at the latest. She told Mrs. Forgan-Smith the same story. However, her aunt in Bundaberg received a letter from her saying she was actually going to Southport. During the day, Miss Norval withdrew £30 from her savings account and exchanged other notes for £20. In today's money, £50 is about $4,500, which was roughly 3 months' salary for her. That evening, she called James East and asked him to pick her up from the Albert Hotel to take her to Central Station. She also saw her friend John Carey, who was leaving on a train to Gympie that night. He said goodbye and noted that she seemed cheerful. After finishing work at 5 p.m, she returned to the Albert Hotel for dinner. Around 6:20 p.m, she jokingly told Merrill Weller, the hotel owner, that she was going to Bundaberg to do a little detective work for her department and would stay at the Royal Hotel there for about 4 days. James East arrived at 6:45 p.m. and found Miss Norval ready to go. After a short drive, they reached Central Railway Station. As she got out of the car, she said, "Don't wait till the train goes. Go along and play your bridge," knowing he often played bridge at the Tats Club on Friday nights. She added, "I will see you on Thursday," and reminded him not to forget the tickets for a show they had planned for the following week. James East watched Miss Norval walk toward the railway platform entrance, and then she disappeared. 6 days later, on Thursday, November 16th, Miss Norval still hadn't returned to work. Worried, her sisters contacted the police, who began investigating that same day. When they searched her hotel room, with help from her roommate Mercier, they discovered that Miss Norval had only taken a pair of silk pajamas and a kimono in a small attaché case. They also found 3 corsets of increasing size. Mercia mentioned that Miss Norval had been experiencing stomach troubles lately, and they found medications that could induce miscarriage, leading police to suspect that she might have been several months pregnant. The police also found a torn-up letter addressed to "Dearest Marjorie" from Albert Townsend, signed "From yours ever, Albert." When questioned, Mr. Townsend claimed that his interest in Miss Norval was purely platonic, focused on their shared interests in health and politics. Interviews with her sisters, relatives, friends, and co-workers, including James East and Mercia, revealed that she had gone to great lengths to keep her true destination and purpose a secret. She had told different stories about visiting her aunt in Bundaberg, going to Southport, and driving Miss Forgan-Smith's sister. These conflicting accounts left everyone confused. Even more puzzling was how such a well-known young woman could just vanish. No one had seen her at the railway station, and critically, there was no train to Bundaberg until 9 p.m., 2 hours after she had arrived. Furthermore, the entrance she used led to southbound trains. By November 22nd, 1938, 11 days after she was last seen, Miss Norval was making headlines, and by the end of the week, the police search for her had come to the largest in Queensland's history. However, the police were increasingly concerned that she might have come to harm. A £500 reward was offered for any information that could help find Miss Norval or her remains. The police interviewed around 800 taxi drivers, thinking that Miss Norval might have taken a cab from Central Station after James East left. They also searched the shores of Moreton Bay because they believed that if she had been buried in the sand, strong winds from that Friday might have uncovered her body. By November 28th, a week into the search, 6 mounted police officers had covered 5,000 acres across Redcliffe and Sandgate. The search was tough, with horses sinking into swamps, officers getting injured from falls, and being relentlessly bitten by mosquitoes. On Sunday, November 29th, thousands of people from Brisbane organised themselves into unofficial search parties, combing through remote bush areas and beaches. The search expanded to the air when the Royal Australian Air Force offered a Seagull amphibian plane to help. The plane took off just before noon, flying low so that Constable Young and the aircrew could look for any signs of Miss Norval on the many small islands in the southern part of Moreton Bay. After seeing no signs of her, the plane flew up the Albert River toward Beenleigh. At 12:40 p.m., the crew in the cockpit didn't notice a high-tension electricity cable running across the river between 2 towering steel towers. When the plane hit the cable, there was a bright flash, and one of the landing floats was torn off. Despite this, the plane continued flying with a long live wire trailing from its wing. When it touched the water, it caused blue flames to erupt. Suddenly, the plane was yanked downward by the cable and crashed through the mangroves, breaking apart as it burst into flames. Tragically, everyone on board was killed. Now, those responsible for Miss Norval's disappearance had 4 more lives on their conscience. By the end of November, police believed that Miss Norval might have died after seeking medical help. In the discreet language of the time, this meant they suspected she had sought an abortion. The search continued into December, with mounted police covering over 50,000 acres and riding around 3,000 miles. By mid-December, a fisherman named Henry Gaggin contacted the police, saying he remembered seeing Miss Norval at the Caloundra holiday home of Dr. Arthur Ross, a man suspected of performing illegal abortions the day after she went missing. However, Detective Sergeant Frank Bischoff, who would later become a corrupt Queensland police commissioner, quickly decided that the woman Henry had seen was Mrs. Ross. He didn't take the time to confirm the actual whereabouts of Miss Norval or Dr. Ross that weekend. Just after Christmas, a man swimming at Wellington Point got the shock of his life when he accidentally touched a woman's head while in 4 or 5 feet of water. The police were quickly called to the scene. A search was conducted of the waters and beaches, but no body was found. It was thought that the man who reported touching something in the water might have mistaken a sea sponge for a human head. This was just one of the 110 times Miss Norval's body was supposedly discovered. On January 13th, 1939, 2 fishermen found a message in a bottle at Southport, but the police concluded it was a cruel prank. With no new leads or evidence, the search began to slow down. In early 1939, as the search was winding down, George Pollock, the Speaker of the House, was struggling with his mental health. 7 years earlier, he had undergone painful surgery for a gastrointestinal issue, which had left him in constant discomfort and likely contributed to his depression. On March 24th, he locked his office door in State Parliament and took his own life. Pollock was friends with Dr. Ross, and some believed his suicide might have been due to the guilt from an affair with Miss Norval, rather than just his physical pain. It wasn't until 1942 that Miss Norval was in the news again, thanks to member of the Legislative Assembly Frank Bombshell Barnes. This colourful Queensland politician, known for wearing a pith helmet, claimed to have important information about her case. He requested that the Parliament change the laws so a corneal inquest could happen even without a body. They agreed, and the inquest started in May 1943. Over 3 weeks, 20 witnesses were called, including Miss Norval's sisters, Mercia Doran, Henry Gaggin, and hotel owner Merrill Weller. They all repeated their stories. Ex-Premier Forgan Smith denied ever telling Miss Norval to create the Bundaberg story to hide her true plans. Miss Forgan Smith said she believed Miss Norval was honest, but denied having any relative in a mental hospital. Dr. Ross was not called to testify because he had been detained as a potential Japanese agent since his arrest in 1942. Even after 80 years, inconsistencies in the testimonies were evident from newspaper reports of the inquest. James East, who previously claimed that Miss Norval had not mentioned going to Bundaberg, now stated in the inquest that she told him she was visiting a sick aunt. This contradiction was not questioned. He also claimed he didn't know she was pregnant, and that he couldn't be the father, saying he had no idea she was seeing other men. Jack Caton was allowed to deny that he had impregnated Miss Norval and that he had never been in her hotel room late at night. He admitted to hugging her but denied any further involvement. Albert Townsend was supposed to appear but claimed he was too ill, stating he had been bedridden since 1941. He denied being intimate with Miss Norval in a letter. Regardless of their relationship statuses, widowed, estranged, married, or single, it seemed every man in Miss Norval's life was just a good friend. This was hard to believe, especially after the voyeuristic testimonies from the Tivoli cleaners. One cleaner admitted to peeping on Miss Norval and her male visitors. Bombshell Barnes, who had prompted the corneal inquest, made sensational claims that Miss Norval had been taken to California to stop her from blackmailing ex-Premier Forgan Smith, and that a cover-up had been in place ever since. When he refused to reveal his sources, he was fined and jailed for contempt of court. Later, he returned to court claiming that a detective named Smith and a citizen named Jones had given him these stories. If Bombshell had genuinely wanted to uncover what had happened to Miss Norval, his actions shifted the focus to wild conspiracy theories instead of pressing authorities to investigate the actual events. Clearly, there was a conspiracy at play. Miss Norval had become pregnant by someone who wasn't admitting their responsibility. She had likely died at the hands of someone unknown, who then disposed of her body. After 3 weeks, the coroner concluded that Miss Norval had gone to an unknown place to get an abortion and had not left alive. The mystery of Marjorie Norval remains just as frustrating and puzzling as it was in the weeks after her disappearance during the 1943 inquest. Why did she tell so many different stories about where she was going? If she had simply said she was going to Bundaberg to visit a sick relative, it's unlikely anyone would have questioned her further. Her first story about transporting Miss Forgan Smith's mentally ill sister was so specific that it raises the question, why create a lie that could end her career if discovered? James East's account was one of the few pieces of information about the last known moments of Miss Norval's life. But some parts of his story didn't add up. He contradicted himself about whether she had mentioned going to Bundaberg. His claim to the truth that he didn't know her destination seems unbelievable. Who takes a friend to a train station without asking where they're headed? Further, why did she even ask him for a ride? It was only a 400-meter walk from her hotel to the station, and she was carrying only a small attaché case. It's possible he drove her not to the station, but to an abortionist, then lied to cover his involvement if something went wrong. Jack Caton insisted he had only seen Miss Norval 3 times, but his testimony contradicted that, as he mentioned seeing her twice at Surfers Paradise and being in her hotel room twice. How could he be so sure he hadn't gotten her pregnant? His testimony, like that of other men, seemed designed to protect his reputation. As for George Pollock, there seemed to be more to his sudden depression and suicide than just the physical pain he had endured for 7 years. If he had been involved with Miss Norval and had sent her to Dr. Ross for an abortion, he might have felt immense guilt, especially given the deaths of the 4 men on the search plane.